This court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge.
The top legal scholars and legal pundits in this country, the ones that are quoted all the time on television that are making their views felt and highly respected people, they all said this is a case that should have never been brought. It's an injustice of justice.
An injustice of justice. Never call him anything but a poet. Anyway, that's, oh, sorry, not just poet, a felon as well. So anyway, it did happen finally today in Donald Trump's hush money case. One of the cases that they allowed to continue kind of until the end. Wasn't that nice of them? That has now, he's been sentenced. The Supreme Court declined to block it, probably only because they knew that he would never be sent to prison and the sentencing would not stop him from assuming the presidency. So why not allow the facade of the justice system working as a treat for America? And so you got a little bit from the judge there, a little bit of Donald Trump inaccurately and intentionally, dishonestly reacting to the sentencing. But like sort of was expected for the last month or so, Judge Juan Merchan did give Trump an unconditional discharge. So he's not going to be going to prison, although he could have, I would say should have, spent 4 years in prison for the crimes he committed. He won't be on probation. There won't be any fines, at least in this count, despite the 34 felony counts of falsifying business records there. And so we have a statement from a former federal prosecutor who says it's essentially a resolution that allows the conviction to stand and preserves the sanctity of the judge's verdict, but ensures that there are very limited consequences stemming from the conviction. And so, as we said, he could have gone to prison for 4 years, arguably. If the justice system at the federal and state level had worked at the expeditious rate it would have, if Donald Trump was literally any other American, he would likely be going to prison right now. But we didn't get that. And here is the judge talking a little bit about some of the reasoning.
While one can argue that the trial itself was in many respects somewhat ordinary, the same cannot be said about the circumstances surrounding this sentencing. And that is because of the office you once occupied and which you will soon occupy again. To be sure, it is the legal protections afforded to the office of the President of the United States that are extraordinary, not the occupant of the office. As with every other defendant in your position, it is my obligation to consider any and all aggravating and mitigating factors to inform my decision. However, the considerable, indeed, extraordinary legal protections afforded by the office of the chief executive is a factor that overrides all others. To be clear, the protections afforded the office of the president are not a mitigating factor. They do not reduce the seriousness of the crime or justify its commission in any way.
I guess, man, I don't know. Look, you can agree or disagree with some of the reasoning there. It certainly seems like it was a mitigating factor. It was certainly, as he referred to earlier, an aggravating factor. I'm certainly aggravated coming out of this. And I love even what the prosecutor said earlier was, this preserves the sanctity of the verdict. So the verdict stands. He committed these crimes. He is a felon. And that's what we can get, I guess. We can point collectively at a rich, powerful person and say, you can't stop us from pointing out that what you did is a crime. Now go be incredibly powerful and wealthy and suffer no loss of freedom related to the things we've identified are crimes. All of this feels like madness. And we're gonna get to what Donald Trump has to say about this in a little bit more detail. But Yaz, I wanna go to you first. Are you surprised by this? Are you happy at all about the verdict? What are you feeling right now?
I'm not surprised, but actually it's because the judge said that this is exactly what he was going to do. He did announce that prior so that the rest of us wouldn't be so shocked and disappointed whenever this is exactly what happened. It is good that he was sentenced. He is our felon president now. What a great start to 2025. What a great start to this 47th presidency as we're heading into it. Trump had tried to get this thing postponed until after he completed his second term as president, but they keep acting as if this is such a stain on his presidency that he's our first felon president. who cares? Like no real consequence has ever come to this guy, right? He's been impeached twice. Doesn't matter, right? He was able to keep office during his first term, and then he was elected to a second term. So it really doesn't matter. All these things that used to hold some kind of weight and some kind of importance to the American people and to our institutions and government simply don't anymore. Any kind of pride that we had in our nation, any pride that we had in the integrity of the presidency as a role, not so much as the president, the person itself, but as an institution. All that seems to have evaporated with Trump. And it's because we let it, right? It's because we let this person occupy that position in our country. So here we are. He's a felon. Great. It doesn't change a whole lot. And Trump is going to continue to go on with his life. He's going to be able to continue to be our president.
As Yasmin was saying right now, when Trump won the election, I was just done. I said, he won. All of this screaming and yelling and all this stuff and going after him, he won. And the truth is, I stopped watching the news after that day, and I haven't watched MSNBC since, because I see people yelling and screaming, and this is what we got to do to stop him and stop him from ruining democracy. And yet somehow he won. And we all know what a horrible human being he is. And we all know that he deserves to be prosecuted for bigger crimes that he committed. January 6th being the biggest, where he actually attempted a coup, and yet he won, and he's in this position where he gets a slap on the wrist. I ran a red light on my bicycle when I was a teenager, and this cop gave me a ticket, and I had to go to court with my grandfather and basically plead guilty or whatever and pay a fine. He didn't even pay a fine. I ran a red light on a bicycle. He stole elections. He didn't pay a fine. And so whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, if you care about the rule of law and the fact that no one should be above the law, it should bother you. And yet a lot of Republicans have decided that it doesn't bother them. They defend him everywhere they can. Yeah. And the Supreme Court itself has said he is above the law. And so there's no pleasure. I don't take any pleasure in seeing him get this quote unquote sentence or whatever it was. And by the way, when the judge found me guilty of running a red light on my bicycle, I thanked the judge and I said, thank you, Your Honor, for seeing me, and thank you for your decision. And I paid the fine, I left. Trump didn't even say, you know what? Thank you, we're done. No, he complained on the way out and claims that he's gonna somehow appeal it again. I don't know where to. So it's just, if I had hair, I would pull it out.
Exactly. And we're going to play some of that tape of him in just a little bit, but no, he's never had to own up to any of it. Just the system will protect people like him, but especially him. Parts of the system that he put into place, Eileen Cannon, those sorts of things, parts of the system he didn't. Parts of the system that were put there by Democrats are tripping over themselves to protect Donald Trump from the consequences of the actions that he's taken. And despite the fact that this guy has been more protected than anyone else in American history from all these crimes he committed in full plain view that everyone knows that he committed, he also whines more than anyone else in history, and that will continue as well. And I know that, there's a lot of people that are frustrated by this. There's also, MAGA people that are happy about it. And I feel terrible for them that they are happy at this result. I feel terrible for them that they have either willingly or unwillingly been so successfully conned by Donald Trump and by right-wing media. They've been duped and propagandized to, that these people who, if you ask them like, you're against the status quo, right? You're against the powerful and the elites and all that. They'd be like, yeah, that's the core of who I am. And I think it's awesome that every single judge in America is working hard to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't pay the consequences of literally anything that he's done. I hate these contradictions that they've willingly taken to heart. This is a massive injustice. And I'm not just mad at them. Like I said, Democrats too, Merrick Garland and all those involved in these cases that slow rolled it and brought it to the point where they would have plausible deniability to be like, well, we don't want to get involved by sentencing him for the crimes he committed. All of them bear responsibility for this. But as I said, Donald Trump has a little bit more whining to do on his way out. So let's take a look.
This has been a very terrible experience. I think it's been a tremendous setback for New York and the New York court system. It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. The fact is that I'm totally innocent. I did nothing wrong. They talked about business records, and the business records were extremely accurately counted. I had nothing to do with them. That was done by an accountant or bookkeeper. I just want to say I think it's an embarrassment to New York, and New York has a lot of problems, but this is a great embarrassment. And I just like to exclaim that I was treated very, very unfairly. And I thank you very much.
He is arguably the only person in America in all of this who wasn't treated unfairly. All the rest of us were treated unfairly. He gets to go off scot-free. I'm innocent, I didn't do it. No, you did it. We know. Michael Cohen spent 3 years in prison doing the thing you ordered him to do. You effed a woman who wasn't your wife, and then you were so scared that it would get out and that people would know about it when I want to be president, that you sent your fixer, your goon, to go pay her off. That's what you did. You did it. It was an intentional thing. And it's super weird to this day that none of these Republicans cared all about any of it. Not the family values people. They don't care about the affair or whatever, or the fact that he's never had to account for that in his personal life. They don't care about the fact that he was concealing the information from them. He didn't want Republicans to know what he had done. He didn't want them to have accurate information. He's saying that this trial was to damage his reputation. All of the crimes, these crimes he committed, was to preserve the myth of his reputation that had been crafted by PR firms and television and all of that. He talks about election interference. Dispatching Michael Cohen to pay off a woman that you effed was election interference. That's why you did it, to modify the results of an election. And now look, it's not to say that there's not gonna be any consequences from this at all. You've got the label, I guess that's symbolic or whatever. I'm gonna jump ahead to graphic 4. So as a felon, technically, right now, he won't be allowed to have a gun under federal law. He has to provide a DNA sample to the state's crime data bank, and he can't hold state public office. So I don't know if he cares about any of that. I'm sure conservatives will be up at arms that he can't own a gun. If any of them are listening, he doesn't care because he doesn't like guns, dude. He pretends to occasionally because he knows it's important to you. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. He's a New York City businessman. He's not a big shooter or whatever. He has to provide a DNA sample. Theoretically, I'm sure there's a lot of places around the country where he's freely distributed that behind his wife's back. You could have gotten it from there instead, but I guess he'll have to make it a little bit easier for them. And he can't hold state public office as if he ever would. So the entire thing just feels like such a farce with the whining and the complaining, Maz. Any other thoughts about this?
Yeah, it's very disheartening. And the fact is, he hasn't even been inaugurated yet. So it's just starting. I don't even know. It blows my mind to think about what is coming down the pike. And by the way, the one thing I will say is one of the main reasons he lost in 2020 was because he was able to be president for 4 years, and we saw what a bad job he did, especially with his mishandling of COVID. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he drops the ball on the major things that are coming down the line. He will definitely fumble, and hopefully enough people that decided to vote for him now will realize that what an incompetent schmuck the guy is.
I hope so. Yeah, yes, I want you to respond to all that, but also the idea that in theory, there are some countries that won't allow a felon in. Do you think that's a likelihood? What do you think about these consequences?
Well, he's not allowed to hold any kind of state office, but he can certainly run the country. And these other countries that don't allow a felon in, they're going to make an exception for him. We know that they are, because that's what happens in his life. Everybody makes exceptions for him. He ran an entire presidential campaign just so he wouldn't have to go to jail. That is a lot of work to do just to not go to jail. I've never been to jail, John, but I did hear that the first rule is that you're never supposed to admit that you're guilty. I learned that from Shawshank, but Trump has already been found guilty and he's not going to jail, right? He doesn't need to keep asserting his innocence to us. It clearly doesn't matter. We've all seen the evidence of his guilt. We were all following the trial. His supporters don't care whether or not he's guilty or innocent because they'll support him anyway. And they already believe that it was a witch hunt or whatever it was that he told them to believe about it. They voted for him. He won the election. Why is he still yelling? But John, we are, what are we, cynical and naive? And we will have a very interesting 4 years ahead of us. I know we were talking before the show and we're already so exhausted, but that's the thing, is that's what they want, and they're off to a great start.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we're gonna try to resist it. There's a lot of caffeine around. I'm going to be dabbling in it. Also, by the way, I know some people were worried if he'd be able to vote. He will be able to vote, and I personally think that the felons should be able to vote. I think people in prison should be able to vote. I've never heard an argument for why they shouldn't. That made any sense to me, other than that they're bad. So he will be able to continue to vote in Florida specifically, and I feel certain that he will vote the way that he always has, by mail. Just for a little bit more irony. Also, I just want to mention, we got the results of our poll. So we asked, should the judge have sentenced Trump to jail? And 77% of you said yes. 22% said no. So I don't know. I kind of wish we had it broken down to no because I don't think there should be any consequences, or no because now it would be interfering with the fact that he was already elected. I don't know for sure. I understand people that think it would spark political violence or whatever. I totally understand all that stuff. That's why I would say the DOJ really should have moved slightly faster than like Mitch McConnell in a race on this entire thing. But I will also say again, one last appeal to some of the conservatives or whatever. Like I know that you think that you put Trump in power to fight the status quo, the establishment. But I am here to tell you, man, the machine you think you're in a rebellion against wants Donald Trump in there. They want him in there because he's going to cut their taxes massively. He's going to transfer literally trillions of dollars to them. And I would personally say, if you want to fight this machine, start demanding that powerful people get locked up when they break the law. When they do insider trading, when they flout, election laws and campaign finance. And by the way, there's a ton of stuff that's currently legal that I think should be illegal. Spending $250 million in an election should get you put behind bars for the rest of your life, if for no other reason than for your own safety. Okay, because that's an insane thing to do. Start locking up powerful people. If they had put Donald Trump behind bars, you know what effect that would have had? The next time someone who has skeletons in their closet decides to run for president, they'll know, oh, I can't just pay people off to hide it. Unfortunately, now that's not the lesson they're gonna learn. The lesson they're gonna learn is I need to do it, and then I just need to win. And as long as I win, it's fine because I'll be president and then everything's legal at this point. But right now, why would anyone not pay people off? $10,000 here, $100,000 there. They're all millionaires anyway. Why should we ever know anything about what they did? Because so many Americans are gonna willingly accept the fact that he hasn't had to pay the price for this. When we allow them to break the law, we tell the next generation that they should be just as corrupt and just as brazen as Donald Trump was.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.